Hello everyone, this is my video list for the year. So every week I try to make a video, and today we're gonna talk about common student pilot mistakes. Welcome back to the channel. If you are a student pilot or if you're thinking about learning to fly, you're in the right place. I'm gonna talk a little bit about common mistakes student pilots make during the beginning of their training, or maybe even after they already have their PPL. You know, everybody makes mistakes. There's nothing to be ashamed about. I've made mistakes, you're gonna make mistakes, and we can always learn from the mistakes we make. I'm not gonna follow any specific order in the mistakes. I compiled a few different lists of posts about student pilot mistakes I found online from different instructors, also with my experience in mind, not only as an instructor seeing my students, but also as a student pilot that I once was, also doing some of these mistakes. So let's dive in. Let's begin by talking about trim. Some students trim too much and some don't trim enough. The best tip I can give here is do very small corrections. So if you're climbing and you feel that back pressure and you have to do a lot of force just to hold the plane with the nose up, just trim. You're just gonna trim a little bit until the pressure is basically gone. Then you let it go and see, is the nose gonna drop? Is the nose gonna go up too much? Adjust. You have to adjust little by little. If you do too much, it's not gonna be well trimmed. So remember, small adjustments. Next one is students tend to look too much inside of the airplane. It's very common for student pilots to always be looking at their instruments. When flying VFR, all we want the students to do is to look outside and learn to control the attitudes and climbing, descending attitudes, the turns, everything just by looking outside of the window, scanning for traffic. Remember, you're flying VFR. When flying VFR, the instruments are there to back you up, not to babysit you. So look outside. Sometimes you can scan the instruments just to see if you didn't climb or descend, or if the airspeed's okay, just checking if everything is as it's supposed to be, but you're looking outside. You check the instruments and you keep looking outside. Every 10 seconds or so you can glance at the instruments, but you shouldn't be flying the instruments. Unless of course you're practicing instrument flying, or if you're in actual instrument conditions, then sure, you should be looking inside. But when you're doing a VFR flight, look outside. Number 3, very long and not well taught radio calls. Of course, in the beginning of your training, there's no shame in doing some weird radio calls, taking long, and then kind of second guessing yourself, especially with the call signs and the taxiways, and everything's new for you. So nobody's expecting that you're gonna do a perfect radio call from the very beginning, right? But something you should do is think well about what you're about to tell tower. Maybe you can write it down. Let's say you're gonna taxi from apron 5 to runway 26 right. Then you think about, hey, I'm gonna say, this is Cessna 172, Foxtrot Quebec, Lima, Quebec, on apron 5, requesting a departure to Abbotsford with information, whatever. If you think about all of that and you write it down, it's much easier than just calling ground and then trying to figure out what you're gonna say after you're already broadcasting. What's gonna happen then is you're gonna kind of forget what you were gonna say, and now you're feeling the pressure, and all of those things combined are gonna lead to a very bad radio call. Again, the tower is kind of expecting that from student pilots sometimes, but if you can avoid that, you're not only saving your time, but everybody else's time. Especially when tower is busy, if you're well organized and you thought about all the radio calls before you actually do them, you're gonna save everybody the trouble. But if you do a bad radio call here and there, that's completely fine. Everybody did that one day. Number 4, over controlling the aircraft. You need to be gentle. You need to be able to fly only with your fingertip. Of course, some airplanes might be a little heavier than others to turn and do some types of maneuvers, but when flying straight and level and doing small adjustments, remember, just like the trim, small adjustments. If you need to climb, if you need to descend, so pitching up and down, you're not gonna yank the controls back and forth. You're just gonna pull up a little bit, little by little. Everything smooth, everything slowly, okay? There's no rush. You're not flying any crazy maneuvers. You're not a fighter pilot. Although it can be fun, flying a little crazy, not with a Cessna. So take it easy on the controls. Number 5, situational awareness loss. In some places, it's very easy to get lost. You should always keep an active lookout and comparing checkpoints that you see outside to the ones you have on your map. If you have a GPS, use it. And if you get lost, don't hesitate. Ask ATC. Call them and say, hey, I think I'm lost. Can you help me? Can you give me vectors? Don't play the hero. It's much better to just ask ATC like, hey, can you vector me in, than having to explain them why you took 3 hours extra because you got lost somewhere and you wouldn't ask for help. Don't get lost in the first place. Always look outside and compare the checkpoints you chose on your map to the ones you can see outside. Number 6, misjudging height on landings. Landing is a tricky part of pilot training. Taking off, it's super easy. Other than other airplanes, terrains and clouds, there are no obstacles when flying. But when you're landing, things get a little trickier. You have to learn how to judge your height when landing, and that can be a little harder than it sounds. When you're flying, let's say at 3,000 feet, everything looks far, but once you get closer to the ground and the runway is kind of growing under you, some runways are narrower, some are wider, so it's kind of hard to judge your height just by the shape of the runway. That's gonna come with practice, so don't get mad if you don't get it in the first few tries. It's gonna take a while. A good thing that always helped me was focusing on the end of the runway once you're flaring, okay? If you flare too much and you see you're kind of going up, prepare to overshoot or maybe add a little power to smooth things out so you don't stall over the runway. But of course, your instructor is gonna guide you through your first landing so you get familiar with that feeling and you learn little by little on how to flare properly and not do too harsh of a landing. Number 7 is hasty go, no-go decisions. A lot of student pilots, sometimes they are unsure of the risks they're taking and they can tell themselves, nah, it should be fine. If something doesn't feel right or it doesn't sound right or it doesn't look right, just don't do it, okay? So if you think the engine is sounding a little bit off but you're not sure, just don't do it. Don't fly, cancel. If the flaps look a little weird, don't assume it's okay. You have to have a lot of safety around your decision-making process. It's better to be on the ground wishing you were flying than be in the air wishing you were on the ground. So, play safe. Number 8, picking bad checkpoints. When planning a flight on your navigational charts, you need to be sure that the checkpoints you choose are actually gonna be easy to spot from the airplane. If you're flying at night and you pick some random train lines or a little park or stuff like that, that on the map, it kind of, it feels like it would be easy to spot. Well, at night with no lights, guess what? You're not gonna be able to see those things. Or maybe if you're flying and you just pick like a town as a checkpoint, that can be a little weird because, in the map, city has perfect boundaries, but when you're flying, you don't know what neighborhood belongs to what town. You don't know every single road unless you're very familiar with the area. So make sure whatever you choose, it's easy to spot. Things like bridges, inlets, ports, those things tend to be very easy to spot. But random streets or parks or train tracks, depending on what time you're flying, it can be really hard. So make sure you choose the right ones. Mistake number 9 is getting behind the aircraft. You should always plan ahead. You should always be prepared. So if you're going back to the airport, well, get your checklist and see everything you need to do. You shouldn't be getting to the control zone without having checked the 80s, without checking anything, and just, react to everything. You should plan ahead. If you're just reacting to whatever is happening, you're gonna forget to run some checks, pre-landing checks, and if you're flying a more complex airplane, maybe with retractable landing gear or other systems or instrument approaches, and you don't plan ahead, it's gonna be very messy. So from the beginning, even if the Cessna is a very simple airplane to fly and you already know the checklist, plan ahead. Listen to the 80s well ahead of getting to the control zone, plan everything, plan the approaches so you don't get too much on your plate when time comes. Because if people start throwing stuff at you and things you have to do, and you also have to do all the checks because you forgot to do them before, then you're gonna be overloaded with all the tasks, and that's where mistakes happen. Another common mistakes include bad ATC communication. Make sure you always listen to the ATC, not only when you have to talk to them, but when other pilots flying around you are also talking to them. You can always get relevant information that you might actually need when just listening to other pilots flying in the circuit pattern or just, transiting through the zone. Nav Canada has this beautiful PDF, which I'm gonna link down in the description, with everything you need to know about VFR phraseology. Bad pre-flight checks. That goes for the pre-flight inspection, flight planning, and everything you need to do on the ground before you fly. If you want to see a detailed video I did about pre-flight inspection, the link's down in the description. Not studying enough is also a problem with a lot of student pilots. Flying is very fun, and a lot of people, when they start flight school, they love the flying, but they don't love the studying. We have to study a lot about meteorology, air law, navigation, and general knowledge. So be prepared to sit with your books and learn before you actually fly. If you study a lot, learn at home, and do a lot of chair flying, by the time you get to the airplane, you're actually gonna save a lot of time and money because you're well prepared. So study a lot. Not flying frequently enough is also a problem. If you take a break, especially in the beginning of it, you're gonna get rusty. Try to fly at least 2 or 3 times per week to make sure you're always progressing and you're not taking any long breaks, as that might set you back a few lessons. Lastly, a mistake I always see student pilots making is buying a cheap headset. If you buy a cheap headset, it's not gonna last you long, it's not gonna be good, comfortable, the sound's not gonna be great, and you're gonna have to buy a better one anyways. So save the money from the bad headset and just invest in a better one. A great headset's gonna last you many years. Some even come with a 7-year warranty. Think about that. This is not sponsored, but I use the Lightspeed Delta Zulu, which has Kevlar cables so they're not gonna break. It has magnesium ear cups, stainless steel frame, amazing noise cancelling, and also carbon monoxide detector. So it's not only comfortable, good quality, and it's gonna last a lot, but also has safety features. And you can also adjust like the EQ for better hearing. It's like a lot of high-tech features. Also, you can record the voice from the flight and all of that stuff. I'll leave a link down in the description if you wanna check that headset. Again, not sponsored, it's just a brand I love and I've been using for a few years now. So, how many of these mistakes have you made? Let me know down in the comments. I made some of these mistakes myself, especially the headset one. I bought a very cheap headset out of Facebook Marketplace and it was terrible, so I bought a Lightspeed Sierra and now I have the other Lightspeed, which I love. Also, communication. When I first got to Canada, English is not my first language and ATC was crazy fast for me to understand anything. So I'm pretty sure I gave them some trouble when I was starting. And also, I used to over trim a lot. I was always fighting with the trim, but now things are much better. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to become a pilot in Canada and you don't know how to get started, just send me a message on Instagram. It's Fly with Pedro and the link is down in the description. And I'll see you next week for one of these videos. Second week of March. A video per week every week. Let's go. I'll see you next week. Thank you for watching.